Harris. General Michael Hayden, being very generous with his time, he remains with us via telephone, checking in this morning from California. Mike, you mentioned something before the break that we need to examine more fully. Paraphrasing what you had to say, those who want to defend liberty would do well to remember that the most recent cyber attacks in California there at Sony Pictures, and now this deadly attack in Paris, the result of the fruits of free speech, and that the terrorists are attacking the very liberties that many who criticize you want to see preserved.
Yep, it really is quite forceful that you had these two seemingly separate events, but both of them going after the strengths of Western society, which is freedom of expression, and we have bent ourselves around the axle for the better part of the year post Snowden. Frankly, from my point of view, and I realize honest people differ on this, but frankly, from my point of view, arguing at the margins as to what it is we want and what it is we will let our government do to protect us so that we can continue to enjoy benefits like free speech, free expression, and free assembly.
Let's broaden the conversation now as we also call in by telephone former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz. Fred, you may have heard some of what General Hayden and I had to discuss, but I'm interested in what you heard leading up to this attack. Fred, any chatter, any concern from your vantage point that presaged these deadly events today in Paris?
Good to be here, JD, and it's an honor to be on the phone with General Hayden. This is one of a series of recent conducted and planned terrorist attacks by radical Islamists in France. On about the 22nd of December, a man ran down about 10 people yelling Allahu Akbar. There was also a shooting. There's been a high terrorism alert level in France for at least the last 30 days because there have been so many threats and actually conducted terrorist attacks. The media in the U.S. has not reflected this. I think this was staged by ISIS. I think ISIS is targeting every state involved in the operation in Syria and Iraq, and I suspect we're going to see attacks like this spreading to other states.
Fred, a lot of thinking initially was, wait a minute, it's an attack on a magazine that took, to put it mildly, an irreverent look at the Prophet Muhammad and satirized that particular faith. But you believe this has to do more with ISIS exacting revenge for France being part of the coalition, actively bombing it now.
That's right. The magazine recently ran a satirical cartoon making fun of al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS. These shooters were not your run-of-the-mill homegrown terrorists. They were well armed with military-grade weapons, including possibly a rocket launcher. The way their guns were fired, the way they were held, according to witnesses I've been watching in the media this morning, this was not your ordinary homegrown terrorist attack. This was a well-armed attack by well-trained gunmen.
And mindful of that, General Hayden, as we were talking earlier, it is interesting about the French because they are insistent on maintaining their culture and language. Anybody who's gone through elementary French and heard about Académie Française understands that to a certain degree. But have we seen with the influx of immigrants who are adherents to Islam there in France, and especially in Paris, that broad swaths of that city are basically shut down and segregated, where the French dare not travel?
Oh, JD, I think that's actually a fact, that there are large regions and described as a donut around several French major cities, and to somewhat the same extent, we see some of the same issues in Great Britain. JD, when I was director, our guys trying to project the future of Europe, they picked four corners. And keep in mind, all four corners are extremes, all right? You don't end up in any of the four corners, but they frame the possibilities of the future. And one of the four corners, in my endless thinking about whether Europe over the next century, one of the four corners was called Eurostamp. And so you get a sense as to one of the formative cultural realities in today's Europe is the increasing Islamicization of the population. That's neither good nor bad. I'm just saying it is.
And it raises questions here in the United States, since for so long some of us have been saying border security is national security. The whole debate about immigration policy and the continuation of illegal immigration. General Michael Hayden, we want to thank you for the generous use of your time and your past experience, both heading the CIA and the NSA, not to mention your days in the military with the Air Force, retiring there as a general. Fred Fleitz, we're going to ask you to stay with us. And General Hayden, we reserve the right to get back to you in the not too distant future.
Thanks, JD. Thanks for chatting. And Fred, great to talk with you again.
Likewise, General.
Thank you both. We will continue here on America's Forum right after we step aside for this Newsmax Now update.